Hey, welcome to today's show. We had a little bit of scheduling difficulties last week because I was at Tony Robbins UPW, aka Unleash the Power Within, and then turned out that hey, let's do it on Veterans Day. So we've got a couple of things to talk about today. First off, Veterans Day I know when we release this, it'll be past Veterans Day, but I just want to give a shout out to all my brothers that I served with and guys that have served before me and those that have served after me and those that are still serving, like Camden's brother and my son, my oldest son, Braden. I appreciate his service, and all the other guys out there that are willing to stand on the line and protect us so that we can have fun and record podcasts and play with audio mics and figure new things out every day. What do you think about that, Kim?
Yeah, just to reiterate, thank you to everyone for their service and for those still serving. And yeah, we get to do lots of fun stuff like have podcasts and, come together on this end of things, right?
Yeah, yeah. It kind of reminds me of something. I was talking to one of the speakers yesterday. So, this was a four day seminar. I have a hard time calling it a seminar because for me, seminar is sitting on your ass and people lecturing to you and you taking lots of notes.
Mm-hmm.
I did that, but I also did a lot of other things: jumping around, hugging people, high fiving, dancing, clapping, walking on fire. Uh, yeah, it's quite an amazing event. But what it just reminded me of the privilege. One of the speaker yesterday. So at the wrap up, Tony brought in a bunch of super high quality, top notch folks, and one of the speakers was Nick Storano. I think is his Storano. I believe is his last name. Nick was born with no legs, one arm, and on the end of that arm is one finger and a stump for the other arm. And this guy, this 23-year-old young man, and I highly recommend you to look up his story, talked about the privilege that he has to be alive, the privilege that he has to speak and help change people's lives, the privilege that he has to make a difference, the privilege that he had in high school to wrestle as
Mm-hmm.
a one-armed wrestler. And if you, that might ring a bell to some folks, because that's probably where he really kind of uh, made the news, if you will, or started to really become who he is. And this young man was a powerful, powerful speaker. And that's something to say after 3.5 days of Tony Robbins to have this to me kid come out there and talk about how he's privileged because there's other people that are quadriplegic. There's other people that are bedridden. There's other people that are can't see, can't hear, can't taste, you name it. And he's got the privilege to live. He's got the privilege to live with one arm. I mean, think
Wow.
about when you hear that guy talk, and like I said, I highly recommend you anybody to look him up on YouTube and grab one of his talks, or if he's in your area, yeah, go see him because uh, powerful, powerful young man. His story is unbelievable, and what he's doing and the changes he's making, and how he's affecting people and changing lives. But just that fact of how he looks at it as a privilege. It's a
Mhm.
privilege every day to wake up,
Oh
and
yeah,
privilege. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it just reminds me so much like we talk about all the time the headwind and tailwind asymmetry. We always feel the wind at our face, not the wind at our backs, and that's one right there. You really switch your frame of perspective when you start thinking about it that way. I'm lucky to have the one arm because there's people out there that don't even have the one arm, and putting it in that perspective of really looking at, hey, all these different things that you have going for you, even if they're things that you take for granted every day, you got a lot going for you.
Yeah, and so that brings me back around to Veterans Day. grateful. Yes, it's a privilege, but you have to be grateful for that privilege. When we put ourselves into a state of mind and a being of graciousness, it's amazing how things change, how your perspectives can change, and just being thankful uh, for who you are and what you have the privilege to do, among other things, and being thankful for the people around you and what they provide you, and even the people that you don't know. It's
Mhm.
it's the you know the, the chivalry. You don't hear that talked about very much anymore, but the holding the door for somebody, and whether it's a guy or a gal or whichever doing it for whichever, it doesn't matter. You know, you're holding the door for somebody, and you're just giving that person a little smile and a nod,
Mhm.
and I had a conversation with my Uber driver this morning. Great young man, Kevin, uh, Cuban American. Great story about boxing and how he's making things work as an Uber driver now and being successful. But uh, what we talked about on the drive was how that little smile that you give to somebody on the street. You're walking
Mhm.
down in like big city Miami, and there's thousands and thousands of people and tourists and all kinds of stuff, and you smile at that person. They may not smile back, but you know what? They may smile at the next person that they walk by,
Mhm.
or that smile that you gave them may be just that little catalyst that'll change their day and change their attitude of the day that they're having, because they may be having a shit day, and your smile may change that for them.
That reminds me a lot because, like, like we're saying with the headwind tailwind stuff, we like to focus on the negatives. And saw this thing going around talking about how if you have a bad day, really take a step back and look at your day and say, was it really a bad day, or did I get stuck in traffic on my way home from work and I lost it, and now it's a bad day because I decided I had a bad day in the last 15 minutes. And you just like we can tear ourselves down like that, and we do so often by letting that 15 minutes affect the rest of our day. That little smile, those small gestures can have a positive effect in the same type of way.
Yeah, well, that's why you have to celebrate success, right? I challenge everybody to, at the end of each day, to sit down and just write down 3 wins for that day. Just
Mm-hmm.
just three. How hard is that? You got to think of something, man, that 3 things that went well during the day, and do that every day, and then once you start that cycle, take the next level and do it for the week,
Mm-hmm.
and write down 3 wins for the week. You could pull it from those daily lists and then build up and build up and build up and celebrate those things.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's something we use a lot in coaching, especially in rugby, is after every game, it's what were 3 things that you did right? What were 3 things you did wrong? And being able to take your step back and force yourself to look into that. I know with Engage with my younger kids, I try to, and, of course, the games are so much fun. It's hard to end early, but I try to give us as much time at the end, because if you get the kids grouped up and get them eager and talking about what they were just doing, that's when all I mean, I'm really writing myself off as a coach here, but that's when all the learning happens, is when they talk about it themselves right there. All the talking I do throughout the day, that doesn't really matter. That's in one year out the other. It's being able to look back at the motions they just did and self-correct. That's the only time they're actually going to carry it forward. And so that's the same type of thing. If you can take it at the end of your day and you can look back and focus on those positive things, or take those negative things and focus on how to make them better, then you can move forward into the next day and have a positive attitude.
That's awesome. Now, are you teaching those kids that they use that same technique at school?
I generally, I think I do a bad job of speaking broadly about life, but that's a good way to add it specifically, of looking at school, looking at the positives and the negatives, and really having an honest reflection of what you did that day. And I think, yeah, I'm stealing that one for this Sunday.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and I think you have to do it into a subject area they can all relate to. You
Mhm.
can't just say, "Hey, at the end of your day, before mom tucks you in bed, think about the three things that." That's a little hard for a kid to do, but man, if you can start to get them to think about. I mean, it's great to do it in rugby, but that's also that thing that we've always talked about how rugby is like life, you know.
Mhm.
Uh, and how you perform in life and how you perform at work is the same as you perform on the rugby pitch and vice versa. We've talked about that over the years with
Mhm.
watching players, and you see how they perform on the pitch, and then you go and you look at their grades in school or the job that they just got fired from or quit because they were going to get fired or whatever. And it's like, yep, I'm not surprised.
Oh yeah, I mean the cause and effect stuff on just being able to put in the work, and like rugby versus life. I got an even simpler one. If you're not doing the drills, you're not focusing in your drills, you're not going to play well. And it's just that type of little thing. You can, and then the rugby, that's your practice for life. You put in that hard work, you got the hard work later on. But if you're not willing to go in and ever put in that hard work, you're never going to be performing at that higher level.
Yeah, yeah. What's that phrase? Practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. Something
Hmm.
along those lines. You know.
Exactly.
And then the other piece of that, though, and we talked about this at UPW several times, is the repetition also. So it's not just you don't go to the gym and do 10 reps on the bench press and think you're going to have massive Arnold Schwarzenegger pecs, right? You got to go to the gym every day. You got to set up a routine and you've got to practice and you've got to repeat and improve and take the next step and then do it again and improve and take the next step and challenge yourself every time. And, and this isn't just physical aspect. You can apply this to business,
Hmm.
right? So if you're doing, whether you're doing a pitch for a startup or a sales call or just a networking event, and you're trying to just meet more people and get more interest in your business, every time you do that, that's practice, right?
Hmm.
Each iteration of that is practice, and then you have those opportunities to get better and better at it. And then if you really want to set yourself up for success, then you practice beforehand. You practice while you're in the bathroom, you while you're driving to the meeting,
Hmm.
before you pick up the phone and make that call, and you do that repetition time and time and time again.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think the repetition can play such a huge role in that. And you have me thinking on the networking side. It reminds me of a story when I was working in the up in Miami, giving tours at the farm all the time. I've talked about this before, how I would adapt my, it wasn't really a sales pitch, it was more of a tour, but I'd adapt my pitch as I would go through based on people's reactions. Well, the way you get to that point where you can adjust on the fly like that is you, after that person leaves and you finish up your tour, you realize that, hey, when I mentioned this aspect of sustainability, that person completely shut down and they did not care what I was talking about. I got too sciencey for them. I got too agriculture. They don't actually care about that. They just like the green plants, whatever it is. Being able to read what the signs were ahead of time, what you did that caused the reaction, and then reading the fallout from the reaction moving forward. And if you can take that and pull those pieces out of it, and then you can rework it and get that repetition and then keep improving yourself.
There you go. It's that continuous improvement loop, right? And that's where that the three up, three down, the analyzing it and reviewing the process and then trying something new. What's that next step? What's that next tweak that you can take to make it just a little bit better? Or maybe that tweak is something that becomes a profound launch and creates an outstanding performance. And it's not just a little bit of improvement, it becomes an outstanding performance. And you never
Mhm.
know until you try those things.
Well, that just makes me think, and this can be really rugby specific, but we were doing scrum work at practice today. And how many times have you been coaching a scrum and you say, hey, move your arm this way 6 inches, or shift your weight slightly this way, and then all of a sudden you have a perfect scrum, everyone pushing in unison. Because if you have one person messing it up, only as strong as the weakest link, right?
Yep, yep. And Tony talked about this weekend, a
Mm-hmm.
2 millimeter change, how a 2 millimeter change can make the difference. And you think about how small 2 millimeters is, and I won't try to tell the story of how he learned about it, but it had to do with a plastic surgeon and different uh, uh, proportions of a person's face and whether or
Mm-hmm.
not they were considered beautiful because the proportions in a 2 millimeter shift in one way or the other made that difference. And that was the origin of it. But it started to pop up in other things. And if you think about it, everything from where you place your foot on a free throw line to how you hold your hands on a football or a baseball or uh, just really anything that 2 millimeter change and how that can make such a massive difference. Another one that comes to mind is golf, because we talked a lot about Tiger Woods when he changed his swing,
Mm-hmm.
in mid career. He kind of hit that plateau. But if you think about it in golf, when you drive that ball and a 2 millimeter change at the tee transitioned over 400 yards, think about how the difference that 2 millimeter change can make over. And I'll stay in metrics. Then we'll say 400 meters, right? But think about the difference that makes over 400 meters.
Mm-hmm.
So you start to think about those small incremental changes that you do in your life to make those improvements, how they project in the long run to the massive improvements you want.
We ought to get a physicist on here that can talk through all this different sports moments, because everything is running through my mind. The one that keeps coming up in my mind though is the hockey slap shot. You think about how fine that movement is to put that puck, bar down right in the corner. Oh my gosh, talk about millimeters.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And those guys are, yeah. I mean, if they strike it just 2 millimeters back from the ice
Mm-hmm.
too far, then the puck's going to go low. They strike it too close to the puck, then the puck's going to go high. I mean, it's
Not to
not going to
even
have as much
mention left and
force,
right.
huh?
I said not to even mention left and
Oh
right.
yeah, geez, yeah, yeah. 3 dimensions, right?
Well, one thing that I'd like to circle back on that you kind of touched on a little bit, you're talking about doing services for people you don't know, not just people you do know. And I think that's you really, I thought you were going to go in this direction for Veterans Day. That's the poetic way of looking at service in that sense of you're going out and you're putting your life on the line for millions of people you'll never even freaking meet, even if you tried to. If you and because there's all these people, you're doing this service for people that you don't know. And that's really, you and I have talked about this before, that sense of service, that's what it really comes down to, is people you don't know, just expanding it out and just reaching out that net of, you want to have this big immenseful impact outside of your immediate circle.
Yeah, as you were saying that, I was kind of thinking, reflecting back uh, on what drove me to serve.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like, hey, I want to protect these people. It was more of I want to protect this idea. And for me, that was, and really for all the guys I served with that I know personally, uh, that that was what drove them, was this idea of democracy and freedom and America. That was what it really came down to me. And that's what made me, drove me to sign the dotted line and serve. Many other things came into play afterwards, but it was the idea of protecting freedom. So I didn't think about people. honestly, I thought about the protection of the idea that I believed in, and
Mhm.
that was where I was at with it.
Well, and honestly, I like that even more because it's so much more abstract, and that's usually when you look at people's real motivations and what can really drive people in the long run. The abstract stuff can work really well, and it's your your belief in that idea, your belief in freedom and America and democracy, and how that can drive you to where, yeah, like you said, you have all these other reasons along the way and these smaller reasons, but you have this overarching theme, your motif, if you will. There we go. Shout out to Miss Odenbaugh back in English high school, high school English. But you have this overarching theme of your of the I just butchered that. Sorry, you got to cut that out. I lost myself.
Overarching theme
Yeah.
of the
Overarching.
ideology, of protecting the ideology, and the ideology is what we all believe in, and it comes back to it. That's why we're all Americans.
Right, and that's why the abstract is like I was trying to get to, the abstract can be so much of a better example there because you're connecting with so many different people in that sense. It's not just the people that you would think of protecting, the people that come to mind in the back of your head. It's everyone who's prescribing to that same ideology in the end.
Yeah, well, and that's what drives most people to serve. Truly, is that it's not, you know. Now, if we're under a threat, and if you think about, and I've met a couple of guys over the years that signed up right after 9/11, and they were signing up not to protect the ideology, but to protect the. Well, I don't want to put words in their mouth. Maybe they were, but I think
Well, and I mean, like you were touching on earlier, it's not like there's just one reason that drives people to do things.
yeah, yeah. But I do think some of those folks were signing up because our nation was under threat. But I still don't think they were looking at it as, well, I need to protect my neighborhood. That's different. Now there's times, and if the Red Dawn hordes of the Soviet Union are jumping out of commercial airliners into the mountains of Colorado to overtake NORAD, uh, then yeah, there's going to be a lot of different drive to serve.
Hmm.
And for those of you who never heard of that movie, it's Red Dawn, and don't see the remake, see the original, like most movies. Uh, the original was just remember Wolverines and a bunch of teenage gorillas, as in high schoolers going up into the mountains and fighting the Soviet horde to win back America. Classic Cold War movie. But gosh, talk about getting off subject.
Oh
But
wow, yeah.
that's a different thing, because then that's like you know that's like the classic make my day law, right?
Hmm.
Somebody's breaking into your house, you're defending your home and property. Or that's not ideology. That is that's defending your castle, sort of thing.
Right, and kind of like we were saying, how the larger, overarching, more abstract ideals are what tends to stick with people in the longer run. I know that I've talked with some folks, and I'm sure you have too, who it was a join after 9/11, and to some extent, see this, not that it was exactly a okay, 4 years later war is over type thing, but the the gut instinct from being attacked like that had subsided to some extent. And it's not that there was no longer the sense of service, but it's just that the mental perspective had changed in that sense.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that goes with most things, though, doesn't
Mhm.
it? As things fade, it's really important right now, and all the news is covering it, and it's in the forefront of our mind. But as we move forward, that story fades, because we live in the present and we look towards the future. If you're if you're in the right state of mind, I have to say, because if you're looking towards the past, that's not a good place to be. So if you're anybody out there looking towards the past, turn around and go forward right now. Stop, go, move forward. Don't live in your past. Learn from your past, drive forward. But when that happens, though, these memories tend to fade. Now, there's always the talk of where were you when, and then there's these events that happen in our lives that we know where were we then. And 9/11 is one of those events that happened across the board for all of us that were at that point in life, old enough to truly remember and experience it. We all know exactly where and when we were. And you go back a couple of generations, and you can ask the same question December 7th, 1941,
Mm-hmm.
and you get the same reaction there. They know exactly where they were and what they were doing when they heard the radio announcement that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor. Ooh, getting a tongue tied tonight. It's probably because I'm starting to sound like Tony Robbins right now because I was yelling so much all weekend like he was. Or yeah, so if I sound a little bit like Tony Robbins, that's why. It must be a contagious disease, huh?
Must be. Yeah, one thing on that I kind of wanted to tie that, back into the sports world and, talking about performance. You have, it's the short-term drivers versus long-term drivers when you're looking at performance and, behavior a lot of the time. And when you look at that in sports, that's game versus perfection is the way I would like to look at it. And I've been saying this to some of the U of A boys recently, like, hey, you're playing good enough to beat Texas on Saturday. That's not what I'm talking about here. But like, come on, we can be better. And that's the difference is if you're just looking at the game this Saturday and you're not looking at the overarching goal of, perfection, you're not looking to be the best rugby player you could possibly be, then you're never going to perform at the level that you were really able to.
So you just reminded me of something that came to me this weekend, and I've seen it my entire life, but it never really occurred to me, and pieces kind of came together this weekend on this thing of what you just talked about, and that's playing to the level of your competition.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means, and this is in life too, because if the people you hang around with are drug dealers, dope smokers, whatever, guess what you're going to become?
Drug dealer and a dope smoker.
Yeah. If you're hanging around people that study, work hard, take care of their finances, focus on their family, get things moving forward, and have a good, steady life and purpose and are driven, guess where you're likely to be?
You're
And
going to be driven.
And it never occurred to me. And even in my coaching, we talk about like energy attracts. So when I work with my clients, I talk about like energy attracts. And what that means is if you're in a meeting and you've got somebody that's ho hum drum, this will never work. That negative energy from that individual can bring the entire team into this pit of negative energy. You'll never solve, you'll never come up with viable solutions and solve problems. It's the exact same thing that happens in sports. When you get out there and you allow your mindset to accept the level of play that the opposition is playing at, then you drop your level of play to the opposition.
Mm-hmm.
It's the exact same thing that's happening in the players, the athlete's mind, because if they aren't focused and they aren't able to recognize it and make that conscious choice that they have to play at this level, they're going to play and match at that same level. I mean, I can visualize, I don't know how many rugby matches I coached that I witnessed that happen in soccer games when your sister was playing and watching that same thing where they're this high level team and playing against this team that barely is in the same league, but yet they struggled against them, and it was all in the mind.
It makes me think so much in the rugby example of the scrum body height. How you could have a well drilled team that is going to be so low with the perfect body position, and then we'd go out against a bunch of fat boys who can't bend over their guts and they're scrumming at this much higher height, and then we would hit at the same height as them instead of making them fight to get low where we were. And it was one of those things like, yeah, when you're out and you're the one in the scrum, yeah, you're being a little lazy. We still won the ball. Yeah, whatever. But if you really look at it, it's like, why the heck would you ever scrum at their level? Why would you ever give them that easy win when you could probably realistically be stealing a penalty off them every single time you engage because you're that much freaking better? But no, you decide to lower yourself. Wrong choice of word there. Lower your level of play to their level and mess that all up.
No, that's the perfect choice of word. That's what you're doing.
I was thinking scrum height. That's why.
Yeah, I mean, but the analogy is perfect. You're lowering yourself. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, you lower your level of play by standing up higher. So yeah, poor choice, but that's all right.
Inversely proportional on that one, right?
Yes, sir.
No, it's just so important to realize that. It's a little bit easier. I'll say, once it's pointed out to you, if you're in that meeting, it's a little bit easier to see that and recognize that, because that Bubba is always negative. He's always the one that says it's not gonna work. So you recognize that, and you're like, "Hey, Bubba, I got you. I hear you, man. But this is what we're gonna do."
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit tougher when you're out there in a game, but if you had that mindset, if you had the right clarity in your mind, then it doesn't matter who you play, because you're gonna play your level of play. Because it works the other way too. You think about, how do you get your rugby team better? Do you play against a team with less skills, or you play against a team with higher skills?
Higher skills always. Or you put 19 boys on the field. That's what we did tonight at practice.
Yeah, that's a technique. But if you think about it in life, if you surround yourself with people that are higher level performers than you in business, if they're, like in your case, they already have a farm.
Mm-hmm.
They're already in the sustainable farming industry, or some sort of recycling or whatever. And these are the people that are part of your network and your inner network, not just somebody that's on your email list, but
Mm-hmm.
actually in your network that you can, have a cup of coffee with, talk to. Think of the knowledge that you just gain being around them. I mean, you don't even have to ask smart questions. Smart answers come to you just because of the people you surround yourself with.
Exactly. I mean, it's just as simple as, thinking about, like, we've talked about so much on this with other folks about just having the right kind of conversation. And if you just have the right people in the right room, you're going to have a good conversation, even if it's going to come up naturally. I know I have a lot of friends that no matter what we're talking about, it's going to wind up being a good conversation, because at some point someone will say something with some behavioral science in it, and then someone else will jump on it, and it'll just spiral down that way. And because that's what happens when you surround yourself with people who are going to be challenging the conversation that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the only way you grow, right? Is being challenged. So when people challenge you, and then I'll throw out another little piece of that, though, and surrounding yourself with people that are at that next level or higher level than you. I don't want to say better, because they're not better than you, but they've already done it and they've been successful at it. They're your source to quick success. It took them 10 years to figure out how to turn the knob to just this point to get this result.
Mm-hmm.
If they tell you, "Hey, Cam, when you turn that knob, turn it at this speed and stop here at number 3 and wait 15 minutes." It took me 10 years to figure that out, but I'm telling you right now, think of how that accelerates your
Mhm.
success going forward.
Oh yeah, and definitely. I just had to say one thing on that because I had a friend who always called that guy knowledge. You then have to challenge whatever that person said at some point, because otherwise you might be doing it a stupid way the rest of your life because one man told you how to do it some way and you did it and it worked and you never question it again.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. But you know what? Why not try that if it's going to get you that success? I'll tell you what,
Oh, oh yeah,
somebody's
that's what I'm saying. You do it that you wait that
yeah,
15 minutes that first time, and next time, yeah, let's do 14:45 and see if it blows up.
yeah. Yeah. Just let me know if you're going to do that blowing up thing. I'm going to stay on this side.
Oh yeah.
Well, hey, I'd like to let's just bring it back around to Veterans Day, and before I kind of close out with Veterans Day, but I'll just talk a little bit more about UPW, and not in a commercial sense, but just in an amazing experience. Uh, Tony Robbins has been doing this stuff for 42 years, and it's an amazing show. Everybody talks about it's life changing. Well, every day your life changes. So I'm not quite into that. My
Mm-mm.
life changed in the last
Put
4 days.
that shit on a t-shirt.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not into that sort of thing. But it was an amazing experience, and I got a lot out of it. I met some unbelievable people from all over the world. uh, and even from our own backyard. A couple of folks I met, Colorado Springs, Lafayette, Colorado,
Mhm.
uh, you know, Romania, Egypt, uh, where was it, Saudi Arabia? I mean, just South Africa. I mean, it was just people from all over the world, and they were amazing people. And what's interesting is how that common drive, and this goes back to whether you're talking about your sports team, your business team, or a larger organization. When you have that common drive and focus, there was 13,000 people there for 4 days doing 12-hour days, 12 plus hour days. A couple of them were like 14, 15-hour days, and everybody was just in it together. And when you have that kind of drive, the energy and everything else that you gain out of that is an amazing piece, amazing experience. So uh so back to Veterans Day. you know it's gotten a lot it's gotten commercialized, and I don't want to bring negativity on that, but uh, when guys when people ask, veterans ask for a discount just because it's Veterans Day, you know, I, that that that's disappointing. I wouldn't say it pisses me off, but I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in that type of, because that's self-serving. Uh, that's a, hey, I'm a vet, you should give it to me, and I'm a little concerned with that sort of attitude happening. Now, if somebody's got signs out, there's all these websites. Uh, that talk about get a discount, get some free pizza, whatever. Hey, that's great, but you know don't walk up and ask for it. I that's just, it's self-serving is what that is, and that's why it's disappointing. If you signed up to serve for the right reason, and then you ask to be compensated for that volunteering to serve, then you're really not serving for the right reason. And I've seen, because it's the thing now, and I love it. It's the thing now to support vets, and I do, uh, and then I do a lot to support my fellow veterans. But when veterans start to ask for it and act like it's owed to them, that's disappointing. And those are few and far between. Uh, but let's be cautious of that. And then I'll also say on the positive side, because right, we want to do that. We want to do that positive, negative stuff. To bring it back to the positive is, hey, when you see somebody and you see it's a vet, a Vietnam vet, because God bless our Vietnam veterans who lived through the shit of not being thanked for what they did, and they got their Vietnam veteran black baseball cap on.
Mhm.
Doesn't have to be Veterans Day for you just to say, hey, thanks. Thank you, sir. Appreciate what you did. Appreciate you taking care of that for us. Appreciate you giving up, your 18-year-old, 20-year-old, whatever, 19. I think the average age in Vietnam was 19. You giving up a year of your life at 19 for those experiences. Yeah, it was a draft, but people still avoided the draft
Oh
and
yeah.
still went. So yeah,
Yeah.
thank them. Thank them. It doesn't have to be Veterans Day. And for my European brothers, uh, and my Sansa brothers, it's the end of, well, Remembrance Day is long gone for them because they're well ahead of us in the time zone. But see somebody with a red poppy, uh, ask them why.
Mm.
That red poppy represents Remembrance Day from World War One for uh, those veterans who, in that war, in that bloody, horrible war that was.
Oh, and I'd like to add on that, as we're saying, thank them, even if it's not Veterans Day, remember them, even when it's not Veterans Day. That's why it's, a little bit poetic. We're recording this on Veterans Day. It's going to come out Wednesday. And because that's really what it's all about. I was going to say that was you gotta think about this all the time. It shouldn't just be one day out of the year. You gotta think about it all the time because you're reaping the benefits of it all the time to loop back. And this is what I learned today. So don't ask me later because I won't have a second one. Was we're talking about to be grateful for any privilege that you have, whatever that privilege is. Focus on the tailwinds that are lifting you up instead of the headwinds that are driving you down. Whether your privilege is the fact that you woke up this morning, the fact that you were walking, the fact that you can breathe, whatever it is, be thankful for it.
That's awesome. And I just continue to learn. And every time you talk headwinds and tailwinds, I'm a little over halfway done with South right now, Ernest Shackleton's book
Mm.
about his journey. And it's like, man, every time I walk outside and it's cold, I think of that. But yeah, be grateful, be gracious in all you do and who you are. And uh, tell somebody thank you, hold the door for somebody, smile at everybody. Don't just smile at somebody, smile at everybody, and tell them thank you and how much you appreciate them. So, hey, I appreciate you all being around listening, and thank you all for the support. And have a great and awesome day.